Hello everybody, welcome to the channel, Life in France. Life in France versus life in the UK. I'm Mark, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and don't forget, hit that red button so you don't miss any future releases. In today's Life in France, I'm going to be talking about buying a French property in France and actually going through the process of a French property search, where to look for properties and actually how to put an offer in and going through the whole buying process. I'm also going to talk about the pros and cons of the French property market compared to the market in the UK. Thanks for watching and I hope you'll enjoy this video. Guys, I just wanted to add one thing regarding buying a French property. Be very careful and make sure you look at the advert in detail and also the details of the property itself when you come to purchase it, because there could be a little hidden surprise. Now, I have heard of this before, but I've actually come across it myself in the last few months when searching for French properties. I saw one property, it was up for €250,000 and it had like a pigeonnier, a tower, plus a couple of dwellings, 2 acres of land and a swimming pool, and it looked absolutely beautiful. And I'm thinking, that sounds cheap, €250,000, where's the catch? The catch was, you were taking on a couple of pets. Basically, the previous owners, an 82-year-old man with his wife, 71, could have the rights to live in that property for the rest of their lives. Now, there was a couple of properties within there, a couple of dwellings, and I guess they lived in one and you lived in the other. But which one? That wasn't clear as well. They could have the better house and you're stuck with the less so nice place. And the situation is, not only do they live in that property for the rest of their lives, now she could live into her 90s as well as he could. You had to pay them a pension, €1,100 per month for the rest of their lives. So if she lived into her 90s, you're looking at another €250,000 that you've got to pay out on top of the initial buying price. And can you imagine what it's like? You know, they've got their set ways, they've lived in that property say 20 or 30 years, you've come along and you want to make alterations to that property. They could really interfere with what you want to do with the house. And also the enjoyment of the house. You know, you want to enjoy the swimming pool, they could end up joining you, I guess. Or, you know, also you want a party, you have a barbecue, you've got to invite them. You know, what's it going to be like? And also, could you end up becoming their carers? Not only have you bought this property, you ended up having to look after these people. So be very careful when buying a French property. And I have seen it before. I saw another property for sale, and the previous owner put in the clause that she had a right to have a vacation in that house 2 weeks a year during the summer months, because she liked the area and wanted to see her friends. She wanted to use the property 2 weeks a year. Again, how inconvenient. So when buying a French property, make sure you read the advertisement properly and also check out all the details so there's no hidden surprises. When I first came to France when was it now? 2005, in search of properties. I've been searching on the internet for 6 months, and as soon as I sold my UK house, I booked my ferry and started the search for the properties. I looked at 6 properties in 5 different regions of France, starting off at Normandy, Brittany, going down as far as Bergerac. The key search thing for me was to find a property with a lake, because I love fishing, and my plan, because I've watched No Going Back, I don't know if anyone's seen that, where there's a place called Crystal Waters. A family from the UK bought a place in Brittany. It was a 6-acre lake, and they turned it into a carp fishery, and I thought, wow, what a life, and I wanted to try that. So out of the 6 properties, 5 of which had lakes, and I actually ended up buying the only place without a lake. I actually bought a pair of holiday cottages adjoining one another, had a swimming pool, and it was what's known as a turnkey operation. Nothing needed to be done to the properties. In fact, when I took the properties on, I even had bookings for that summer. So I'd already started receiving income. With regards to the properties that had lakes, word of warning, what you see on these estate agents' websites isn't exactly what you get. They don't show you the surrounding area. You know, you see this nice photograph of this house in a tranquil part of France, but you don't see the surrounding farm that's encircling that property, and there's cows, muck everywhere, farmers' machinery going up and down all the time. And some of the houses, you know, you see this nice picture, but when you go inside you think, God, how does anyone live in it? Because they were dumps. You know, it looked like someone had just trashed the place and just left everything there, but there was actually families living in it. I couldn't understand how people could live like that. And I took my father along with me on the house hunt. He was a builder by trade, so he was invaluable as regards to his advice. And with all the properties with the lakes, apart from one, there was so much work that was needed to get them up and running as holiday cottages. And my dad said to me, you know, you're going to have to take 2 or 3 years of work, have loads of expense, just to get where you are with actually the property I did decide to buy. And in the end, I bought the place in Brittany with the pool and 2 cottages. The runner-up was a house. It was 2 houses, 12 acres of land and a 4-acre lake in the Limousin region, and it was actually the cheapest property I saw. Any idea of the cost? €210,000, which at the time was about £140,000. That was the cheapest property I looked at. 12 acres, 2 houses that just needed a little bit of tarting up, and a 6-acre lake. The problem I had with it was that I did need to still continue to work in the UK, and the Limousin region had no airports at that time, and it was a long old drive just to get to the Channel and get back into the UK. And then I looked at the owner, who was in his 70s, and he just looked absolutely haggard. And I just thought, is that going to be me very soon? 12 acres of land is a lot of land to look after. That's one of the biggest problems a lot of Brits who come over to live in France have, is that they buy properties that look good, they have a lot of land, and then they find out how much hard work it is to actually look after that land. So, and the other thing with regards to that property in the Limousin region, it was a 15-minute drive from the local town, and there was only one other neighbour nearby. And I just felt, as an Englishman living in France, I was just going to be too isolated. Also, I was single. Where am I going to meet the girls? You know, if you're stuck in the middle of nowhere, you've got no social life. So I needed to find a place that, yes, was in the countryside, but had all the facilities around. And that's why I chose my place in Brittany. Because I'm just, although I'm in the countryside, I'm 5 minutes from a local town. I've got some cities within 25 minutes away from me. So there was just so much more to offer. And the beaches are only sort of half an hour away as well. So I think I've got the good location. I will get my lake at some point, hopefully. But at the moment, I'm happy with my life in France. When it comes to the prices of properties in France, I'll give you an example. This property in the UK, 3-bedroom, terraced house in Havering, Hornchurch. £500,000. I couldn't believe it when I did the research this week. £500,000. Compared to this one in France. What do you reckon that will cost you? In English money, £300,000. 5-bedroom house with an acre of land. And that's typical of houses in France. Because one of the biggest expenditures in the UK is either your mortgage or your rent payment. In the UK, you know, you can pay, well, in London, up to £2,000 a month just for a 1-bedroom apartment. When my parents are in Essex, they have neighbours that rent their 3-bedroom houses out for £1,800 per month. And on the flip side for mortgages, I was actually a financial advisor in the UK, and in the UK, at one point it was possible to actually get a mortgage 5 times a joint income and up to 105% of the value of the house. Northern Rock at one point, this is why they had the problem, were offering a 90% loan to value, and then they offered a 15% loan to value personal loan given the same mortgage rate as interest rate on the personal loan and over the same term. So basically it was just a way of getting around it and giving 105% loan to value. Fine when the market's going up, but when the market crashed, people started to lose their homes because they couldn't afford the mortgage payments, their houses were in negative equity, and they just decided to walk away and hand the keys in. It was atrocious. In France, on the flip side, it's quite hard to get a mortgage. They will only give you 3 times provable income. So as a self-employed person, I have to show my accounts, and they give me 3 times whatever I showed for those current years. As a self-employed person in the UK, I could have done something called self-certification, which means if I had a £100,000 deposit, I could say I'm earning £100,000 a year, and they would give me a £300,000 mortgage. So I could actually physically go out and get a £400,000 house without actually proving what I earned, as long as I put that 25% deposit down. In France, you can't do that. They're a lot stricter on borrowing, which is a good thing, because one of the things as a financial advisor that I saw in the UK was there's this need to keep up with the Joneses in the UK. There's so much pressure on people to have nice cars, to go on nice holidays, to have all the gimmicky things within their houses. The difference between life in the UK and life in France is in France, no one cares what car you drive, what clothes you wear, where you go on holiday, and the gimmicky things, nobody cares. It may be like that in Paris. That's why a lot of the French outside of Paris don't like the Parisians, because the Parisians do have that culture of keeping up with the Joneses. But on the whole, anywhere outside the major cities, nobody cares a bit, tuppence, as regards to what you have. They just treat you as the individual. And that's another thing I like about France. Guys, if you're thinking of moving to France, another tip with regards to your house hunting. When I came over, it took me a week to see those 6 properties. I think it was about £1,700 for the ferry, the petrol, and the hotel accommodation for me and my father. And I clocked up over 1,500 miles during that week. Can you imagine if I hadn't found the house of my dreams? If I had to do that all over again? So be very careful, make sure you've got loads of properties to view when you do come over, and to reduce the disappointment. Because as I said, there's a lot of properties out there that aren't what they seem. Give you an example, Dad and I went down to, this is the one at Bergerac, so this is the furthest south we went. It was a 4-bedroom house with a 1-acre lake. And I actually said to the estate agent, you know, one of my main driving forces is that I'm looking for properties with lakes. Yes, this one's got a lake, so fantastic. So just the way it worked out, we arrived in the area on the Saturday, and we had to spend 2 nights because we weren't able to view it until the Monday. So we had 2 nights accommodation for this property in Bergerac. Bergerac's lovely, by the way, but that's digressing. And when we went to view the property, yes, there was a lake, but it was dried up. There was just literally a puddle of water. You could see where the remnants of the lake were. But the owner turned round to us and said, oh, it's been dry for the last couple of years. We've had very dry years, and there's nothing we can do about it. Can you imagine how frustrating that was for me? You know, we spent 2 nights there, driven that extra mileage, only to find the house had no lake. It just shows you can't trust the estate agents, but that's another story. Don't take me down that route. Hello everybody, welcome back to Life in France versus the UK. In my last video I talked about house hunting in France, and I touched a little bit on mortgages. And what I'd like to do in today's video is to talk more so on the mortgage side, the financing side of buying a house in France, buying a property in France. Now, there's a huge difference between financial advice in the UK and financial advice in France. As an advisor in the UK, When I sat down with my clients, I had to explain every single detail of whatever they purchased, be it life assurance, a pension, a savings plan, or a mortgage. In France, none of that happens. For general insurance, my insurance guy just says sign here and that's it. He doesn't give me any details. Well, it's all in French, but he doesn't explain it to me. He doesn't make sure that I have a full understanding of what I've just taken out. And the other thing I've noticed in the UK, as a financial advisor, I had to tell people exactly how much commission I earned for whatever product it was that they purchased from me. In France, that doesn't happen. My insurance guy doesn't tell me how much money he earns from the advice he gives me for the policy that I've just purchased. It's totally different in France compared to the UK. In the same way, when buying a property in France, I think that's one of the main reasons a lot of Brits don't even try to get a mortgage in France. If they've got the equity in their property in the UK, they just remortgage that property, release some funds and become a cash buyer in France because of the palaver of getting a mortgage. Or they've retired, they literally sell everything up in the UK and again come across with the money and buy a house outright. For me, because I was only 39 when moving to France, I had to take a mortgage out because I didn't have the funds behind me to buy a house outright. So I wanted to get a mortgage. The mortgage itself was a third of the size of the mortgage I had in the UK. Mortgage in the UK, easy as pie to get. In France, totally different situation. I didn't sit down with a French financial advisor. I just went directly to, at the time, Barclays France, because they provided an English-speaking banking system. So I filled out all the forms, sent all my accounts in. In the UK, it can be as little as 5 days to get a mortgage decision. Sometimes we've even managed to get a 2-day turnaround. You know, we put the application in, 2 days later, the bank says, yes, we'll lend you the money. In France, it took 6 months. 6 months to get a mortgage agreement. One of the hiccups, life assurance. They insisted I had to take out life assurance with their bank. In the UK, you don't even have to have life assurance on a mortgage. It's down to you as the individual whether you take the risk or not. Obviously, we always recommended it, but as an individual, you can say, no, sorry, not interested. In France, they won't lend you the money unless you have the life assurance to protect the bank for the money that they've lent you. Now, at the time, I was 16 stone, into my bodybuilding. I was very lean, very fit, but 16 stone. And on my height and weight ratio, they decided to load me. 50% loading. So, for a small decreasing term assurance, they wanted me to pay €35 a month. In the UK, I could have got a level term assurance for the same sum assured for probably £10. It was ridiculous. It was basically highway robbery. €35 for some decreasing term assurance. And that caused a delay until they did the underwriting for the life assurance. Before they made their decision, before I jumped through all the hoops, they wouldn't agree the mortgage. And then once they did, the wrong paperwork was sent out. So it took 6 months from me actually making the offer on the property to actually completing. And it was just ridiculous. Guys, I think it's for that reason a lot of Brits, when buying a property in France, don't bother with getting a mortgage in France. They either get a mortgage in the UK by re-mortgaging their existing property to release the equity, therefore becoming cash buyers, or they've retired and they've sold everything in the UK and again came over for the cash. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about another aspect of buying a house in France. And also, you know, this is going to help you if you're doing a property search in France, because what I'm going to ask you to do is not to focus on the price so much that the property's up for sale for. Because within this video, I'm going to give you some tips on how to knock the price down. Now, my background has always been in financial services, and when I was working in the UK, I used to give my first-time buyers the same advice, because at the end of the day, people who are putting up their houses for sale are expecting people to knock them down a little bit. Well, I'm going to show you how to knock them down by sort of 20%. They always used to call me Mr. 20%. I always tried to get 20% of everything I bought, and in particular houses, because it can make a huge difference. And if we look at, let's say, an average house price of €300,000, if you can knock 20% off of that, that's a saving of €60,000. So please listen carefully, and I'll give you the advice that I used to give my guys back in the UK for those first-time buyers who are perhaps not so savvy on the house purchase process. But it works just as well in France. And I actually did use it when I came to buy the property that I'm in. Now, the advice I used to give my clients in the UK was, when you go around a house and viewing it, you normally find that the seller is going to walk around the house with you. Don't do it with every room, but when you are going around the house, get a few main points. It could be the size of the garden, or it could be the size of, say, the master bedroom or the living room. And what you do is you make out that you've seen a bigger garden or a bigger master bedroom with an ensuite at another house that you visited. And you do a comparison between those two houses in front of the current seller. For example, you know, you could go into the garden and think, oh, a bit small, isn't it? You know, I'm just looking at a place yesterday and, you know, the garden was twice the size of this and they're asking like 30 grand less. What you're doing is you're creating a negative view of the property you're walking around. And the seller is listening to that. So then later on, when you do come into actually making an offer on the house, it's not going to be a surprise to them that you're coming under the asking price. And also, because you've created this negativity around their property, they might start actually believing what you said. So when you offer them, say, 20% less, they may think, oh, actually, he's got a point. You know, he's mentioned that he's seen this other house the other day, and that's got a master bedroom with ensuite that's twice the size, or a huge garden, or the kitchen's immaculate compared to mine. Perhaps he's got something to say, and perhaps I should take this because I might not be able to sell the house at this price. And as long as you're prepared to walk away from a property, you've got nothing to lose. And at the end of the day, if you actually really do fall in love with that property, you can always go up in price, go up in 5% increments. But, you know, don't ever try to expect to pay the full asking price. And what I did when I bought my house in France is I actually sat down with the owners and I said, you know, because the housing market and the economy was on a downward trend in the UK. So I said, you know, the problem with the price you're asking, I'm expecting the French house market to start going down as well, because it's the UK guys that are pushing this market up in France. And if the UK market is suffering now, the economy is suffering, people aren't going to be willing to pay as much for properties in France. And I also then mentioned a few negatives about the property. You know, I've got to do this to the house, I've got to do that to the house. And I came in at 20% lower than the asking price. And they accepted it. So, you know, I saved myself an absolute fortune just by working smart. Because at the end of the day, they probably weren't even expecting to get that asking price. They were expecting someone to knock them down. They may have been expecting perhaps a 10% drop. But because I created this negative feeling about the property a little bit, and also the economy, they then accepted the 20% reduction. So, you know, at the end of the day, I came in as a winner. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this short video on buying a property in France, and also searching for a French property in France, and where to look for a French property in France. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, and don't forget, hit that red button so you don't miss any future releases. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.